Welcome to Emotion Chips, where we talk about the real reason everything happens for a reason. I am your host, Charlie Carroll, along with my cool co-host, Mallory Redmond. Now, how are you? Was cool not good enough for you this morning?
I mean, it's fine. I was building it up to be more exciting, and I'm a little disappointed, but that's fine.
It was lame. Should we start over?
No.
My confident co-host, Mallory Redmond. My contagious co-host, Mallory Redmond.
That is a terrible way to introduce me during a global pandemic.
Oh, good point. Let's edit contagious out of there. How are you feeling this morning? We're going to talk about a conversation you and I had in the car on the way in.
We did not have a conversation in the car because you wouldn't let us.
Well, right, because the next season 2 of Emotion Chips, we are calling our boy from the Late Show, James, to set up our own carpool karaoke where we have cameras in the car because Mallory and I tend to have our best conversations about the podcast in our cars on the way to the podcast.
I like the idea of carpool podcasting.
Yeah.
Is anybody doing that?
I mean, we could do that and we could be in the same car and just drive around type of thing.
Okay, maybe it's not that cool. Never mind.
And see exactly what happens.
No, strike that.
So we started to talk and then you wanted to engage what today was about. But the thing with this is, ladies and gentlemen, when we start talking about this in the car, it lets all of the steam out. And I said it's kind of like sex. You can't put it back in there after the tension and the pressure is released.
I'm just letting that live.
Well, you did follow up.
I said that's a very blanket statement to make about every...
It was a generality.
...couple in the world. Maybe that's true for you, but that doesn't mean it's true for everybody.
You don't have to try to get personal here. It is a generality, but typically to have this great, amazing episode with your significant other, once you let that go and that investment is there, it's just not the same immediately. That's all I was saying.
Okay. I think we understand.
Well, but the idea behind it was, I think I opened up our phone call talking about you coming here to the great Midwest from the West Coast.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And
that is true.
I said that God got
9 years ago yesterday, I moved to Seattle.
Wow. Time flies.
Time flies because lots has happened in my life in the past 9 years. And you make this big...
2 children.
I have 2 kids. I found a husband there. But you just you make these big moves. I moved from Chicago to Seattle, and I just can't believe I did that. And look, all that came from it.
All the good that came from it.
Yeah. Big risk, big reward.
Big risk, big reward. And so I was teasing Mallory about leaving a liberal city. And would you like to share your comment?
Well, I don't know my immediate comment, but you always make fun of Seattle and other liberal cities, and so I just said,
Go ahead.
I just said something about how TikTok is being banned before semi-automatic rifles.
Yes, which we can talk about that just for a second.
Well, you jumped right on that, and that is exactly what you.
Well, that is
the excitement. You are dumbing down the excitement that's bubbling within you right now.
I have a lot of excitement bubbling within me because it has to do with the topic that I had planned for us to talk about today, which is the need for capitalism and socialism to live together. But prior to that, or before we get into that, let's just talk about this concept of TikTok being banned and not assault rifles. Everyone has the right to vote as to what they believe and what they think about the Second Amendment. I often say this, that the point of the Second Amendment, if you study history, was for the people that were founding this country who were just coming from a government that had taken over and told them how they were going to live to protect themselves against the government. Now, we have a lot of issues happening today that we did not have happening when the country was founded, like mental health issues, which that definitely has to be considered, right? And we probably should look at how that should change and alter things. But the original idea of the Second Amendment is just that citizens have the right to bear arms, and the second part is key, against their government that would get out of control, and instead of serving them, would want to teach them how to think and how to live. The history of humanity is people coming into power and taking that power and using it for themselves versus for the people. And so the Second Amendment, the purpose is, if the police department has the right, or the military has the right to have a high-powered firearm, the original purpose, the original intent of the Second Amendment is, we the people have the right to have what our government has in order to protect ourselves from a government that gets out of control. That's the original basis. Go ahead. Your thoughts on that, Mal. And here's what's not acceptable.
Okay. Go ahead and lay down the law.
Here's what's not acceptable. I said, don't say another word. Mal brings this up in the car, and I said, don't say another word. And she said, why? I said, we're going to talk about this on the podcast. And then she says, we're not talking about this on the podcast because you will barrel over me.
Yeah, that is exactly what I said.
That is a little painful. Okay, now I am going to fold my hands and be quiet and not barrel over you. I would like your genuine thoughts about what I just said.
What's so funny and frustrating is that in this relationship, you are me in my marriage, because I'm like the one that's really good at arguing, and I barrel over my husband, but he's getting smart.
I'm sorry, Darren.
But Darren's getting smart.
Good.
And he'll just stop engaging with me when I'm like that. And so
you're taking a page out of his you're taking a page out of his playbook.
Well, look,
I want your genuine thoughts. I want your genuine thoughts about this, because then I want to comment about TikTok. Being a fan, I did originally have it, and I got rid of it, and I'll tell you why. But first, I want your...
Because you're a 41-year-old man.
Get out of here.
Okay, right to bear arms. So the people have the right to have what the government has?
I mean, that's the original context of the amendment.
The military has some pretty like crazy things used to fight entire armies. I guess I don't understand why an individual person needs the exact same thing. And, when it comes to I just want some gun control. Like, I understand some people want their guns or whatever, but I would just like it a little bit more gun control. We're having this conversation. This week is the 1-year anniversary of 9 people getting shot down 2 blocks away. Like, it's very real. And for me, I think about, like, my kids go to daycare. Your kids go to school. Your wife shops in malls. You go to movie theaters. Like, all of these places where we've seen, to me, it's a lack of gun control. I'm sure there are mental health issues. I'm very much an advocate for mental health, but I don't believe that we have the level of gun control that we need. And I think that current events in our country is proving that. And so I would like a little bit more.
Well, and I don't disagree that we need to come up with a modern approach to trying our best to keep guns out of the hands of people that are way too unhealthy or way too young to be handling them. There's no doubt about that. Statistically speaking, though, on a grander scale, gun violence runs wild, using your hometown of Chicago as an example, where the gun laws are more stringent and tighter. And so, as we'll talk about always on this podcast, it's where do you find the balance in all of it? And often when people are advocates for gun control, and this ties into a lot of the other social arguments that we have, my problem is when we always want to make government the solution, whether it be alcohol that becomes a weapon because people don't have the ability to choose when to stop, and then they get in a vehicle and drive, and now that is a weapon that takes other people's lives, or whether it is firearms, I think what we're always going to be searching for is how do you find the balance of allowing people to make decisions for themselves, and how do we assess, because all people are not equal, right? We all are at different levels of health relationally and socially and spiritually and emotionally. How do we find a way to assess someone's health without infringing upon their rights? Because, and we've said this so much here, that anytime you're a part of any group of more than one person, you've got to lose a little bit of your rights for the sake of the entire group. And that's really the overall topic that I wanted to get into today, is why there is a need for capitalism and socialism, that they're actually the same side of one coin, and they're not different coins that should be in opposition to one another. And I honestly think, if you watch the news and you read the news and listen to the news, what we find is we have a lot of people that just haven't gone deep enough and gotten into the why to understand that we actually need each other, and we actually need opposing views, and then allow those to drive us together to come up with solutions that are balanced and full of compromise on both sides in order for us to be a better, stronger, safer society.
So what do you think gun owners, what do they have to give? Like, where's the give there?
I think that there's nothing wrong with having more extensive background checks and getting into a person's history when it comes to those that are buying firearms that have greater capacity, that it's not hard to understand that you might be okay and you might be relationally whole and healthy and strong, but that doesn't mean that the next person is. And, again, I think what we're going to keep coming back to is the balance that needs to exist when it comes to not everyone is at the same place. And when people are coming from different places from a health standpoint, what is the compromise that has to be made? Now, again, if you're getting into the context of the Second Amendment, you've got to understand that the Constitution was written based on and for people that were living in that specific time. The other side, meaning that you could make an argument that the Second Amendment needs to be amended in light of what we're dealing with today. And, they were shooting muskets then that you had to load, one round in, and then you fired it, and you had to do it all over again. Mm-hmm. And so you could definitely make that argument that we need to revisit that and take into consideration all that exists today. But then the even greater question is, how do we get the government to find the balance, or those that are making policy and decisions to find the balance in empowering people to make decisions for themselves whenever possible, versus electing people that feel as if they have to think for their community and make decisions for their community 10,000 people at a time. The purpose of government should be to serve the people. And yes, that includes coming up with laws that everyone has to abide by in order for the community to be a better place. But what it doesn't include is all of a sudden you taking the right to think for 100,000 people at a time based on your personal beliefs. I'm thinking of, because it'll be on TV this morning, Montgomery County, right outside of Washington, D.C., where on a local level, I have an article pulled up here from the Times about the CDC calling on schools to reopen, just in light of the overall look at children and families and single parent families. The CDC this past week called on schools to open because of how small the risk is for young people. And not everybody agreed with that. And the health director out of Montgomery County outside of DC decided that they were just going to call a last minute meeting and not shut down just public schools, but even say mandate that private schools had to shut down as well. And what I can see, because there's a meeting this morning, there was so much kickback from the parents that the governor stepped in and said, listen, if you want to do that with public schools, you're an elected public official, you can do that, but you're not going to think for all of these private schools. They need to make that decision for themselves. And so there is a county meeting this morning where they're going to try to figure out what that looks like. And so again, finding the balance in how do we serve a large group of people without allowing the government to do what it's done in almost every other country throughout the world over time. And that is, people get elected and forget why they got elected, which is to serve the people. And instead, and this is just a macro situation of a micro problem. This is true in parenting. This is true in marriages. This is true as a boss at work. It is much easier to think for people and make directives than to invite them into the conversation and to make a decision together. Like, you know this from being a leader and leading a lot of people, that sometimes instead of going to that person that is working for you and empowering them to understand and make the decision, it's much more efficient for you in the short term to just make the decision for them, though long term you find yourself having to go back and make all of the important decisions because you never empowered them to think for themselves and make those decisions for those that are around them and under them.
Yes, I hear you. I just think we're going to remain on opposite of differing opinions when it comes to guns specifically, because we're only as healthy as our most unhealthy citizen. And so if you look at other countries that, I know your view of the government, but if you look at other countries that do have stricter gun control, many countries do not have the problem that the United States has when it comes to mass shootings.
Well, if you're referring to socialist countries where they dictate everything, even what's going to come out of a person's paycheck and what they can and cannot say, like in communist China, where they tried to protest certain things, or Iran, where they tried to protest things and those people are gobbled up and killed. Yeah, that tends to work.
I mean, I don't think that it has to be one or the other when it comes to.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be one or the other either. I'm just saying I'm bringing us back to why it was originally written, to protect ourselves against a government that was coming from a model where the government stepped in and said, we're going to teach you how to live. And again, there's context to that as to what was available at the time. And I imagine that the founding fathers would write it differently if we were plopped in to this society today where firearms had the capacity to do the damage that they do, right? TikTok is a whole nother story, owned by a company in communist China that our intelligence agencies caught leaking information back to China, which, when you do sign up for TikTok, if you read the fine print, no different than Instagram or Facebook, by the way, which is very interesting, you give them the right to use your speaker. And they say that they won't listen to you, but I think all of us that are listening to this podcast or watching this video know what it feels like to be talking about something like smokers, grills, and then next thing you know, that's in your Instagram feed. So there are similarities. I think what the conversation is around with TikTok is, do we trust a foreign government to be collecting all of the facial recognition features, what your different assets look like? Anything that's on your phone is fair game when you sign up for your pictures, any voice notes, anything that you're putting into your notes. That is fair game if you really get into the fine print of things. And so why I would say the Second Amendment and gun control is not a fair comparison to trying to ban TikTok is because of TikTok, what is on the backside of it, what the access is to people listening to conversations and potentially taking information. I would say it's two different arguments.
I don't have an opinion on about TikTok. I've never used it. it's not a thing that I'm into.
Right. My kids do.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's a big thing. It's just not my thing.
Sure.
And so I don't have an opinion about TikTok in itself. I understand the potential harm. My reasoning for comparing the two was just the sense of urgency and action that the government wants to take on TikTok while there is a gun crisis, I would say, in our country that is not receiving the same amount of action.
It's interesting that you say a gun crisis.
Well, you brought up Chicago. I mean,
yeah.
That I go to a concert or I send my kids to school or I walk around in a store and the thought crosses my mind, I could be shot up right now, or my kids could be shot up right now. I don't know. That's a crisis to me. It might not be to everybody.
I think compared to the history of mankind, we're the first group of people, we're the first nation that would think that might not be possible. That throughout the history of mankind, as soon as 200 years ago in most countries, it was kind of like the wild, wild west where evil could, and that's why there was the sheriff. That's why the sheriff was developed. And again, what you and I talk about a lot and bring it back to is evil does exist. And I think we want to come up with policies to make ourselves feel better about trying to get evil under control. But if in Charlie's opinion, if you want to get a hold of the huge manifestations, like you said, the 1 year anniversary here in Dayton, Ohio of 9 people losing their lives, we need to start cutting and attending to the small roots of evil that are embedded in our music and our entertainment and what we tolerate when it comes to treating one another when the media isn't there and when people aren't watching. Like, there's an opportunity to overcome evil every day with good. And it's what frustrates me so much with the church engaging primarily through social media, the idea of social injustice, if and often when statistically, we're just not doing anything on a daily basis to overcome evil with good by being out there in our community. I'm not saying that we can't have posts about it or talking, political talking points about it, but it should be people over post and people over political talking points. And when you find yourself consistently preferring others and stopping when you see the need on your main street and in your community, well, then go ahead and write a post about social justice and the need. I'm okay with those things. I'm okay with the posts and the political talking points. I just think it needs to come after every single one of us take our responsibility to overcome evil with good on a daily basis.
And I think overcoming evil, all of that is true, that it all requires our personal responsibility. And I think that there can be more done with gun control in order to overcome evil.
Sure. I don't think anybody's arguing.
I guess I'm curious why you are for the banning of TikTok, like overcoming evil in that way, but not overcoming evil with better, like more gun control. Like why can the government ban TikTok but not semi-automatic rifles?
Well, I think if you understand how warfare works on a very high level, where you would have, I don't know how many million people in the United States are on TikTok. I would say, can we Google that really quick? Let's see how many people are on TikTok. I would say.
But why can't it be both? It doesn't matter. I don't care about the details. I'm curious why it can't be both. Why is the banning in one area okay with TikTok, but you push back when it comes to? So
there's 800 million on TikTok, and I'll finish answering your first question and then I'll get to your second question. If, it started with the government telling military families that their families could not have TikTok, like their children could not have TikTok because of the conversations and the information that surrounds government employees. And what I know, and then everybody can take what Charlie says he knows and take it to the internet for themselves, is that it was discovered to what extent the company has access to the information on people's phones and all around them. And I haven't set the timetable for guns versus TikTok, But what appears to be there, or what could be there, is if massive amounts of information is being collected by a foreign entity that could be used against us on a grander scale, especially in light of the current mood and relationship between the nation of China and the United States, that is being addressed immediately. Gun control, in my opinion, is another topic that we do need to come together on to say, in light of the magnitude of what today's firearm can do, what do we do about it? I think the firearm piece is a much bigger conversation, because what we've also done is stripped away the majority of our community's mental health facilities and treatment programs. And so now we're having, we've created most communities, or a community where the context is a lot of people are on their own, where their children are being raised by their school teachers and not their parents, because it's a lot more single parent homes where that single parent has to work and they're not seeing their child as much. Or you could just say don't have the opportunity, whether it's because they're at work or they're exhausted when they come home from work, to invest in their child by creating an intentional context that child is raised in, for the mental health and the emotional health and the relational health to be there. And so if I were a public servant, I think the question that I would try to be rallying people around is what needs to change across the board to include the Second Amendment in light of what we see and what we're dealing with socially right now. That's what I would say. I can stop immediately. Now, it looks like the answer to TikTok is going to be Microsoft is going to purchase them, and then it's just going to be done, and TikTok's going to be a thing again. More than likely, that'll be a very quick solution. I think, getting back to answering your question and being really direct about it, I think it's because gun control, where we're talking about tools that can be used for good that instead end up being used to harm people, is it's a broader thing where there are more underlying issues with it that need to be addressed. That's what I would say.
So then they need to be addressed. And that's what I'm saying about the TikTok. The sense of urgency is, Sandy Hook was 8 years ago, when a bunch of elementary school kids were gunned down at school. Then let's talk about it and actually do something about it. And that's what I'm comparing. I mean, if you go to the Council on Foreign Relations, their website about gun policy in the U.S. compared to other countries, the data is that other countries that have stricter gun control have less shootings, which is just, that's just common sense, right? If you have less guns, here, let me read this.
Sure. Where are you reading from? What site are we on?
The Council of Foreign Relations. The United States, with less than 5% of the world's population, has about 46% of the world's civilian-owned guns. And if you, I can put this in the show notes, but if you look at the homicides in the United States, it's not a competition with how many there are compared to other countries.
Yeah. So
I'm just saying that I understand the TikTok thing, and I'm not arguing that at all. It's the sense of urgency that all of a sudden, we're banning this, it's done, no more. Whereas we just keep going back and forth on gun control in this country.
Today is President Obama's birthday.
It is.
You saw that on Instagram.
Yep.
Why do you think President Obama is not back in Chicago trying to fix his town's gun problem, especially as an African-American male, and a lot of that happening between black on black crime in Chicago?
I don't know. And if you're going to get me, I don't know.
To me, it comes back to the spirit of this is we always try to get government to fix it, when I wonder, and not just with President Obama by any means, this is consistent with a lot of politicians or quote unquote public servants, that once they're out of office, why aren't they using their influence and their connections to go back in and fix it when no one is watching?
I don't know. And President Obama is doing whatever he's doing. I'm saying that
I say that because I
countries-
think he's the most positioned person to be able to do it.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I think there's a ton of people that are positioned to do it and aren't doing it. And that's the problem, because what government should not be responsible for everything, but it appears to be working at least somewhat in other countries when government is doing something. And so what's happening now is not helpful. And I don't think it all rests on President Obama. Sure, of course, I wish he was doing more. It rests on, there are lawmakers in the country that could be doing something.
Let's take names out of it just for a second and just like address the political system.
You're the one that brought President Obama into this.
Yeah, sure. But let's take names out of it for a second just to show that it's a bigger problem than any one person.
It totally is.
At the end of the day, it really comes back to, we have a political system that has been built that becomes a system or a world within a world. And instead of it being oriented toward really fixing problems, especially when no one is looking, it has become a world within a world where when you get elected, you have to do and say all of these things in order to get reelected. But we really don't, really does not come back to consistently taking care of people, especially the people whose voices are not being heard. And that's the maddening thing about politics is politicians, public servants should exist most for helping the voices that are not being heard be heard. And I would love it if we did term limits for every single political position. And I would love it. And I know there are cases where politicians get out of public office and then they go back and do more with what they have. I don't know that it happens enough.
Probably not.
And I wish it would. Ultimately, I say take names out of it in order to see that it's a bigger issue where it's a lot easier to discuss talking points and say what you stand for, but just not get out there and do it. And the government should be about we, the people, putting other people's needs in front of our own. That's the only way a community really works, is by literally having public servants that remind us through their actions and lead by example to our responsibility to take care of the least of these and put others' needs in front of our own. And that's why I think capitalism as an approach to community life and socialism are two things that need to go together, not two different approaches that need to be opposed, argued over, and political stances as to why you should vote for me. I think they have to exist together. And I think one of the reasons why we have the trouble that we have in our country today is because we think they cannot live together, but they're radically opposed.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I'm on board.
And you know, you say that and most people are like, it's impossible. Well, I think Jesus was a socialist. I mean, if you look at his life,
I agree.
And you know, when, again, the glam, right? The sparkle, when wealthy, influential people came to Jesus because they loved the crowd that was around him, which just confirms that we are wired to be connected. When they had their money and their positions, whether it was in the tabernacle or in the Roman government, when they saw people running to Jesus, they wanted to go to Jesus and buy some of that from him, because more than your resources or anything else you'll ever have, you're wired relationally, which we can, you know, a lot of what's being called on for schools to reopen is because of the social implications and the lack of, or the lack of health involved in isolating people. Multiple studies, and I'll try to pull one of these up for the podcast, confirms that being socially isolated could be compared to smoking a pack of cigarettes a day because of how it affects your biology. And we would agree with that from an energy standpoint. Mm-hmm. Your body needs more, you know, dis-ease is about a lack of health, not the presence of unhealth or dis-ease, right? And so we know that being around other people, especially being around healthy people, is the key to bringing your overall biology up. And some of the hormones that are released when you are socially isolated does so much damage to your body. They compare it to like what it does to your mitochondria. They compare it to smoking a pack of cigarettes each and every day. And so when you get back to that, our need for being relationally connected and wired, you can see where those Pharisees and the Romans and the tax collectors wanted to get in Jesus' presence. But Jesus often said something like, listen, I don't have a pillow. I don't even have a pillow, let alone a place to rest my head. I am completely trusting that I am being guided by a greater force here. And if you want to follow me and you want to be a part of this, it's an entirely different lifestyle. You're welcome to join. And when people realized they couldn't get it quick and they couldn't get it cheap, they walked away. And that's what I'm trying to point out here when we talk about politics and politicians and government not being the answer. I think too often, and I know you're not an advocate for this, but I think too often government is the quick, easy fix where we feel as if we elect the right people, somehow it's going to eliminate our need for being the light and the justice and the love that we want to see in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I just think that they are not the easy fix. They are not the only ones responsible, but they are responsible. I mean, just
yeah.
And
you're talking about politicians, right?
Correct. Yes. And so I just don't want to swing so far the other way where it's like no government. They have no place here, because I think they can be used for the betterment of society.
Yeah, I definitely think government is necessary, but the difference, when I say that Jesus was a socialist, he spent his life receiving from the Father and what was around him and his knowledge of what was around him in order to give it to others and serve them and put their needs in front of his own. And so capitalism is an idea of freedom, that you have the right to choose good or to choose evil, and we trust and hope that you choose good. Where capitalism looks dangerous is when we start to see that the free platform or the open platform or that open garden, that field, has bad that grows in it that tries to take care of or take advantage of and manipulate the good. And so capitalism is important because we don't, in Charlie's opinion, don't want to divorce what some would call karma, or what the Bible would say is reaping, and you reap what you sow, mm-hmm. where I can show my children, if I put in the hard work and put the effort in, I can expect a certain return. And that's why capitalism is important, is because we do all have personal responsibility to embrace freedom and to interact with the freedom of choice to see the varying results. Now, when I say Jesus was a socialist, to balance out capitalism, socialism has to be a motive and not a mandate. Socialism falls apart when the government says everybody's going to do this because we don't trust that more people would choose to do right with their freedom than wrong. And so we're just going to say that out of all of the money Mallory makes, she's going to lose an even 30%, and Charlie's going to lose an even 30%, and this person is going to lose 30%, because at the end of the day, we just don't believe that people are going to give out of their abundance. And so we need to say that it has to happen. And I don't think that works. I think we see, historically speaking, that doesn't work. And so what I'm an advocate for and would like to see is capitalism, the freedom of choice, and competition to more clearly highlight what is working and what is not working as society evolves. I would like to see capitalism and socialism balance each other out, and they can when we make socialism a motive that I want to take care of my neighbor's needs. I want to put other people's needs in front of myself, starting with the people that are closest to me, with my spouse and my children. That's the first place that God should be showing up, right? With those that are closest to you. And then it goes out and moves out from there. I think socialism as a choice for government and our approach to community only exists because the Christian and Catholic Church have not done their job. We've turned inward and made it too often. We've made it about ourselves versus making it about others. And Jesus was just great about this, and his half brother James was great about this, just saying like real religion is taking care of the widows and the orphans and meeting the needs of those that you don't see, that you don't often see, or you don't hear their voice because they've lost it.
Well, the good news is that if we're all living in such a way that you're describing, where we're putting the needs of others before ourselves, I don't know that it actually matters who's in office.
No, it matters a lot less.
We just put so much. Listen, Donald. Gosh, I just sounded like you.
Don't
you
do that.
say that all the time. Listen,
don't. Such positive connotations here. Episode 28, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 28.
Welcome to Emotion Ships.
Yes.
But I just think that, there's just as much trouble and grief and angst and joy and goodness in the world with Donald Trump as president than there was with Barack Obama as president, a Democrat and a Republican, in my opinion. We're seeing evil being manifested in different ways, maybe. But you say that America's a sinking ship.
Yeah.
And it's one that we're all on board, and I think it's true. However, what you're describing is we just put so much weight in who is in office. Like, if I do my civic duty to vote for this Republican, then I am doing what I need to do to make this country better. Or to vote for this Democrat, then I am doing what I need to be doing to make this country better. When at the end of the day, like, it takes a lot more than going to. I think we should vote.
Amazing.
I believe that we should vote, but I think it takes a lot more than that.
Well, and we take a lot of heat. Mallory and I take a lot of heat.
I'm sure I've lost a lot of fans today, guys. I'm sure of it.
No, I don't think so. I think people respect you for your strong opinion.
I'm going to carry on, but go ahead. We take a lot of heat.
No, but I think, you and I take a lot of heat for just being advocates that government can be a answer, but they're not the answer. And I agree that it's way too often we try to elect those that would take our responsibility from us. And as we said several episodes ago, government can't be the answer and the problem at the same time. And it's only the problem right now because we tried to make it the answer. And what we need to get back to is prioritizing a local church, or the local church that is focused on the right thing, which is the life of Jesus, which, more than a name that you probably don't have a positive connotation with, is a life that was lived and documented as to putting others' needs in front of his own. That's what it was about. And ever since then, large governments have tried to use the Christian movement and other movements as a means to control people and get them to do what they think they should do. But what we know to be true is that change starts, and change in the community starts when we find a way to stop pointing fingers and instead, even if it seems small, do the things that we can do on a daily basis to make a difference in the lives of those that are brought across our path. And again, often the thing that keeps us from even trying is we get so overwhelmed by the need and what we see and what we hear that we think we can't make a difference. Mm-hmm. But when a bunch of individuals start to prioritize meeting the need of other individuals, things can change.
Mm-hmm. Can I just tell you, a couple of weeks ago,
how am I doing it not barreling over you?
I don't know. I need to process afterwards. Can I just tell you, a couple weeks ago, I was driving
Yeah.
downtown here I was driving to church Sunday morning. So it was early. I have to be at the church early. And I had my 2 girls with me, and there was right on the interstate, there was somebody who, I don't know if their car broke down or they ran out of gas or what, but she was walking to the exit to something to get help. And honestly, this was probably 3 weeks ago, and I didn't stop. I passed her and I didn't stop because I had the girls and I was running late and whatever. I had things to do. It's a work day for me, and I didn't stop. And I have thought about her probably every single day since then. Like, why didn't I just stop and see what she needed? Maybe she needed just to call somebody, or I could have given her a ride. It would have taken 30 minutes tops for me. And that's the kind of thing that now I'm challenging myself. Like, if I see something and I feel like I felt led to stop and I didn't, I just kept going. And that's the kind of thing that if we all did that, if we all stopped for the people on the side of the road, or stopped for the people that we feel like we're being led to stop and just say like, hey, can I do anything for you? That is what a incredibly different society we would be living in.
And you can't beat yourself up too bad, because there are going to be times where we don't stop, right? We don't get it right, and we need to get it right the next time.
Right.
But at the same time, I think one of the things that we need to be mindful of is that they don't necessarily need our money or our help, getting the jack out of the back of the car, though that could be the case.
Right.
I think it goes a long way just for people to know that other people care. And there's a lot of it out there, right? Like, let's not be all doom and gloom.
Sure. Yeah.
There are a lot of fantastic people out there. A lot of you that are listening to this are that kind of person where you do stop and try to make the difference. And, we need to exercise caution when we stop, right?
And that's why I mentioned, like, I really felt led to stop. Like, I think if it's going to be a situation where I'm in danger, I'm not going to feel that pull.
Right.
But I felt, and I'm not beating myself up, but it's an example that I hold on to because I don't want to feel that way again, where I'm like, oh, I really should have stopped for her. Okay. So as we're sort of finishing up, can you tie this to, talk a little bit about emotion ships here, especially when it comes to, I think probably the main thing is with politics, right? And we all have an emotion ship, politically speaking.
Well, I think politics, the emotion ship connected to politics is control and anger. And the reason why we see so much anger is because of uncertainty, and uncertainty makes us feel in control or out of control. Right? Most of the time it's out of control. Mm-hmm. And so anger and frustration are the emotions that come from a feeling of being out of control that comes with uncertainty. And, it's interesting to think about, we have access to more information than ever before, and written thousands of years ago, scripture said that in the latter days, the love of many would grow cold. And it was tied back to lawlessness, which is tied back to the abundance of information. And that's not hard to make that connection. The more information you have, it's very easy to become or to experience paralysis from analysis, is what they say, that, oh my gosh, there's so many things being said and there's so much information out here. Yeah. I don't know what to do. And then what you end up doing, what most of us end up doing, is we pull away, and we're not going to listen to anyone because you just get caught in the middle. And so I think that taking the right actions, which is responsibility, sacrifice, and empathy in our country, we can do a lot of good and turn a lot of things around. But when we allow disinformation and so much coming from so many sides to keep us from taking action and being the difference in our community or in our marriage, we're going to continue to struggle. And so the emotion ship is, what are you doing with uncertainty right now? The word stress can be brought back to the one word, uncertainty, right? Stress, all stress is uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And so when you have uncertainty, the reason why the creator of the universe advocates faith, even going back to the Old Testament and saying Abraham was righteous because of his faith, is because faith is like the ultimate life hack to uncertainty. That though things are uncertain, I am certain that life is happening for me and not just to me. And it should be, there were some statistics that came out this past week about married couples, and especially people that would say they are happy and satisfied in their marriage, doing much better with COVID-19 than people that are not. And again, that comes back to, biologically speaking, like we are a whole, and parts affect the whole. I think, in the news this past week, there's always this narrative of feuding between the different, White House task force and CDC and World Health Organization and all of this. And one of the things that I thought of is our approach to the pandemic is a reflection of our medical system or our healthcare system at large, where when it became a profit thing, right? Because these, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies, or almost all of them, are public companies. By law, they have to be in business to make a profit. Most people don't understand that a lot of doctors, 50% of their salary, up to 75% of their salary, comes from kickbacks of the drugs that they sell. And so our healthcare system has been, in some cases, intentionally taken over, and in some cases unintentionally taken over by companies that are writing our medical students' textbooks that have an invested interest in creating products that meet the manifestation of the problem, not the holistic problem that is creating that manifestation. And so back to my thought is, our approach to solving this pandemic has been very limited and very narrow, because that's the way we approach the human body. We figure out where the manifestation of pain is, and we chase that and try to change that with altering of the chemistry inside the body through pills in most situations. And it's fast, and it's often less expensive than addressing how am I living or thinking in a way that is causing or leading to these type of problems. And that's why I'm so cantankerous.
Oh.
Yes. When it comes to the idea of government, because we see this mentality everywhere. How do I farm out my responsibility to get a quick fix and not have to worry about it, anymore? And answering your question, it really all comes back to the idea of uncertainty. Dr. Fauci, love him, hate him, doesn't matter. He should be a piece of the equation, not the whole equation. It shouldn't be just an infectious disease expert. There should be a sociologist on there. There should be a psychiatrist on there. There should be a whole panel that says, in light of what's going on, what do we need to do to address this as a whole, knowing that people are whole people, right? Because eventually a number will come out for deaths connected to our response to the pandemic, the people that committed suicide, the people that got on drugs, the people that were divorced, and everything that comes from it. And it's why Jesus said that the love of money is the root of all evil, because it throws everything off. When profit and making money has to be held up at the top of our decision-making filter, right, or matrix, then often people get compromised, right? Because often the best way to take care of people, it doesn't, especially on the front side, mean the most amount of profit. Mm-hmm. And so, again, why I push back so much is because we've got to get out of the quick, simple, direct ways to fix things if ultimately long-term they're not overly effective, if they could be causing more harm than good. And so, what's the emotion ship? I think it's anger and frustration that comes back to feeling out of control because of the massive amount of uncertainty I can't even say this. It's not that it's there, the uncertainty. Uncertainty's always been there. Now we have tools that show us how much uncertainty is there. And then you get political movements that use the uncertainty. They highlight it and they talk about it and they point fingers about it, and they can spread it very easily. That's why I think we are where we are. Not because more uncertainty exists today than ever, but because it's the access to it, and for it to be talked about and put on our face is easier than ever.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that makes sense. Did you know that U.S. billionaires, this is from ipsdc.org.
Yeah.
U.S. billionaires have become $565 billion richer since March 18th.
I believe it.
$565 billion. While 43 million Americans have filed for initial unemployment benefits.
I believe it.
It's so messed up.
I believe it. Well, it's, again, stop for a second and don't think about the dollars as much as the positioning of it. What is true, again, going back to this idea of capitalism being like this open field that things can be planted and multiplied, resources can be multiplied, that would be great. And obviously, some of those, we don't have a number, some of those billionaires have a reputation for giving a lot of their wealth away, right? We think of Warren Buffett, we think of Bill Gates, who have committed to giving more than half of their wealth away. The prayer or the Jesus model would be that these people that have been given the gift to make money would use that gift to spend it on people more than not. More of them would spend their wealth on others than not. I was thinking about this the other day, watching the NBA come back. And all of the players, you see that now they're wearing Black Lives Matter on their jerseys, and it's on the court and everything. It would be interesting to see with, I don't know what percentage of the league is African-American. Obviously, it's very high. It would be interesting to see how many people are reaching back into the neighborhoods that they came out of and survived, having understood the systemic problems that exist there. And again, the color of your skin does not matter in this situation. We're talking about Black lives because that has been a huge topic and right in front of us here recently. But all of us have a responsibility when we have a gift that leads to resources to turn around and have the motive, and that leads to an action, of course, to share and give those resources away. And what the Jesus movement, what Jesus advocated for and what he promised in Mark chapter 4 is you can't give too much away. That if you commit to a lifestyle of giving your stuff away, I will multiply it and give more to you to give more away. And that's why I say that we need to maximize and utilize capitalism, which is personal responsibility and freedom, without allowing it to become unhealthy, which would be pride and greed, to where we take our winnings and our earnings and our profit and we turn around and invest it in those that are around us, knowing that the Bible advocates that you cannot outgive God. And this is why, when I say socialism has to be a motive and not a mandate, if you make it a mandate, you get rid of the spiritual, the energetic promise and power behind it. The moment I am mandated to give, and we talk about this being in a church, right? That both Mallory and I are on a church staff, and we talk to people about giving. But the moment I mandate and tell someone, or I scare them into giving, and I make fear the motive, it totally strips that gift of its spiritual power, which is going to produce 30, 60, or 90 times what it could produce. And so that's why I say that socialism has to exist and be the counterpart to capitalism, but the motive is where it's all at. If the motive is right, and this is why the Bible says that God loves a cheerful giver. God loves a cheerful giver because the giver gets it. And it's the energy, it's the emotionship behind my giving that empowers it to come back to me many times over. Mallory knows it, and some of you have heard my stories. Like, I have been challenged to give, up to $50,000 where I couldn't afford to give that. And it started with fun things like watches, giving, watches away that I was buying to turn around and flip, $10,000 watches that I would buy because I was in the right place at the right time. And normally I would flip it to make money off of it and have it be some side income and a fun hobby for me. But there are times where the Lord has said, I want you to buy that one. And then after I buy it, even when it was on a credit card, the Lord say, now give it away. And I can tell you one specific time where that happened, and the multiple of investment that was unexplainable and painful to give a $10,000 gift away, turned around and within weeks led to a multiple of that coming back to me, greater than 10 times. And so I think, again, socialism is powerful, and it's the life that Jesus lived when it's a motive and not a mandate. And that's where I would love to see, because these billionaires that you referred to live into that principle. And again, some of them are, but it comes back to when you're a position, here's what power is. Power is information, right? Knowledge is power. It is absolutely true. The Bible advocates for it. When you have knowledge, you have power. The people that we're talking about that are on the other end, that don't have the income and don't have access to resources, are people that don't have that knowledge. And if you don't have that knowledge, or you're not positioned to receive certain things, when tragedy happens like this, the people that make the market move, right? The people that come together to say, here's where things are going, let's do this. Those are the people that are advising all of these billionaires as to what they should do with their money. And that's why the multiple happens and their money expands, because they tend to be ahead of, like, at the end of the day, people are making everything move, right? It's like an emotion ship. We say it's the real reason everything happens for a reason. What we're talking about is energy is in motion. And so when the economy is going to move, it's going to move because people are making it move. And the people that are making it move are closest to the people that can pay them, which are those billionaires. And that's why their wealth multiplies. Economics.
101. Okay, so my last question for the day, because I have to pee, so we have to finish this.
Yes, I don't want you getting up and walking out again.
I've done that once. What do you think about masks?
I've been wearing a mask recently when I wasn't wearing one before.
Because, let me interrupt you. You
Please.
talk about mandates.
Yep.
But then you also talk about preferring another person. Mm-hmm. So in light of those two different things.
Well, right now I don't have a choice because our governor has made the mandate. And so I'm going with it because he made the mandate. And anytime I can be 6 feet away from someone or not in a public place and I don't have to wear it, or I'm putting food in my mouth, I take it off because it doesn't feel good to wear it. Interesting that you say that. There was a study that came out today talking about whether or not they work. We do know that this is an airborne thing, and that masks knock down on those things getting out into the air. And so what is my thought? My thought is if it's a mandate, then I'm going to go with it, and do my best to prefer others. If it weren't a mandate, I would not be wearing a mask right now.
And you don't think that that's putting yourself and your comfort and health above another?
I think that there is enough information out there to say that we could approach this pandemic in other ways where those that are more susceptible or vulnerable to the virus because of pre-existing conditions should respond differently, or maybe exercise caution in going into certain environments versus everyone that has less than a 1% chance of death in this situation going on and living their life to keep the economy and our whole world spinning. I'll give you an example. There are a number of restaurants here in our city that have shut down. In most cases, it is not uncommon for those local, and I'm referring to local restaurants right now, not necessarily the big chains. But with these local restaurants that have gone out of business, in most cases, you will have a person or a couple that gave anywhere from 5 to 35 years of their life to serving people in the community food, providing jobs for people in the economy, and creating jobs and a paycheck for those that are providing the food to them. There is no getting that back. If you lost your restaurant, which, I won't name the one that I'm thinking of just a half a mile from us, but if you had to shut down after you invested hundreds of thousands, if not, over $1 million in your restaurant, because people stopped coming out with, conservatively speaking, 85% plus of them, 85% plus of those people not having a real risk of death. What I am interested in is long-term, when we look back on this, and, I think we're doing the best that we can, having not dealt with something like this in the modern age and how people travel. But I think we'll look back on this and question whether or not it was the best decision to shut as many things down that we did that took people 10, 20, 30, 40 years to build, that they're never getting back, when for the large majority of people, there was less than a 1% chance of death in their case. It's a question that I have. Mm-hmm. But, in this situation, I'm not an elected official and I'm not making decisions for people. And so until I feel like it becomes, this huge detriment to me or my family, if there's a mask mandate, I'm going to go along with it and wear my mask, though it's uncomfortable.
I just wanted to hear your opinion on it in light of what we've been talking about.
Yeah. There's so much to be said, but ultimately I think what we're going to figure out is it comes back to, whenever possible, preferring other people and putting their needs in front of our own. I am fascinated by our country's interest in catering to the 1% to 3%. It's very interesting that we tend to have whole movements that are driven toward 1% to 3% of a people group.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
No.
I could push back on it.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Well, I want you to elaborate first, because I'm not sure exactly what you're saying.
Well,
what whole movements?
What I'm trying to say is, I think what we would see is that when those that are in power don't, and I'm not saying like people that are elected, but I'm saying people that have a voice, people that have enough resources to have a voice and to come alongside someone else. When we don't step up and use the resources and the power that we've been given and the voice that we've been given to serve other people, what we will end up catering to is the 1% to 3% of people that are on the bottom and are screaming the loudest. And I don't think that's always going to be the most efficient approach. Do I understand why it happens? Yes, because those that are in power aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. But at the same time, I've watched people wreck their life when 95% of what they're doing is going in the right direction. But because they're hypersensitive to the idea of failure, they start reorienting the way they're living their life and spending their energy to try to get rid of that one thing or that 1% to 3% of their problem that they don't like or that speaks the loudest to them. And sometimes that 1% to 3% is just something that needs to be listened to, or that we need to be patient with in order for it to get resolved, and it resolves itself.
Okay. It's hard to respond to when there's not, I guess maybe I could have used an actual example. But I think the only thing that I would say is, like I tell my girls, granted they are very young and don't really understand what I'm saying, but like when we were quarantined, I would try and explain to Evie, like, we are doing this for the least of these.
Sure.
And so if the 1% to 3%, I don't think that what you're saying is the 1% to 3% is the least of these, because
No, I am. But listen to what I'm saying. The 1% to 3%, and let's say the bottom 20% needs to be addressed and given attention and catered to by those of us that are not in that specific situation. And it's not just about money, right? It can be emotional health too. We need to turn and give of ourselves to those people, because there's somewhere in our life that something is wrong and we're off, and we need others to come beside us. The point is as a whole, as a community and as a government that moves forward, it's if we that have a voice were doing our job, we wouldn't have to make our whole approach to government or community the focus of meeting the needs to those 1% to 3% or 20% of people, because the people within the system are taking care of it versus waiting for somebody else to do it, waiting for somebody else to come along. And so, if you want a real example here, I'm just saying, look at the statistics of the people that are coming down with the virus, or the people that are really vulnerable to potentially losing their life over this. How could we, with a whole wide range of health experts, develop a plan that might eliminate some of the negative results to our response to this virus, versus treating everyone the same and asking everyone to respond to it the exact same way, when there is just a small group of people that have a high chance of losing their life over this? And it's easy to talk about. I know that, just sitting here on a podcast, and it's much harder to fix. But I was using that as an example where you can't take, 330 million people and ask them all to respond the same way, when we'll just call it 2%, less than 2% of people have a chance of losing their life over this. I think there can be a much more holistic response when we don't make our policies and our response to something driven by such a small segment of the overall country or community. And I could give other examples, which probably should be on another episode than 28.
Cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. One of the things that we never talk about here that we need to talk about is, would you share this and like this and do whatever you need to do with this content? We are passionate about helping people become the best version of themselves. And we think that this content is worthy of being shared. And so if you don't mind sharing this on your social media channels, we would be grateful for that. See you next time.